Hey everyone, Timothy Halverson here. I'm in the studio getting some things configured. I'm trying to basically build a mobile podcast setup, and I have a few things figured out. So I wanted to share those while it's fresh top of mind. In many ways, this is probably just for my future self to remember, but I figured while it's fresh, while I got it solved, after I troubleshooted with ChatGPT, hunted around YouTube and Google forever, um, I figured I would just document what I came up with, and hopefully it'll be useful for somebody else out there in the community, okay? So let me show you what I'm going for here. So here's the basic setup, okay? So I've got a laptop, okay? I got a laptop, external monitor. So this is the main setup. I'm just trying this out. So this is one piece of the puzzle, which is the Stream Deck. I'll make a separate video on that because I already set it up on my other computer, which is in the main studio downstairs. Okay, but I'm going to configure it for OBS on this laptop as well, so I'll set that up fresh. This is the third generation Scarlett 2i4, which is the red coated box. Pretty popular product. It's the third generation, and I got this so that I could put two microphones in. And then I've got Shure SM7B, okay, on this tiny little $5 desk mic stand, okay? And then those are routing into two FET heads, okay? And then this guy is just a TRS XLR cable, and I have to route that into an HM4, and that basically amplifies the signal, okay? It requires its own power, which you can see there, and power. And then you can route it out to multiple different headphones. So in this case, I'm plugging that gray cable that's basically feeding out of the monitor, and then I can split that across multiple headphones. And the reason I do it 4 ways is because then if I do this as a video podcast, I can use 2 of these, or up to 3 actually. I can use 3 of these for guests, okay? And then one of these is basically feeding the audio directly into a camera. So I can have a camera, okay? I can put a camera either on a gimbal or a tripod or wherever I want. I can have a second camera over there, which is hiding in my closet. That's really messy, so I won't show it. And then you can use these little cables here. Oh man, so many cables. But basically, I just have a 3.5 TRS cable, male to male on both sides, and then that is able to feed out of this. Okay, this comes out, and then I convert that into, basically I use one of those little headphone jacks. Okay, so this is what I do. I put this converter, so it's a TRS converter with a flat head, and then I split it into here. And then these are 3.5 out splitters, okay? And then that basically allows me to put it into the microphone input on the camera, okay? So then the workflow is I come over here, like for this Sony, okay, I can just run this on tethered power or battery powered. And then, this is so hard to do with one hand, I'm sorry. On the side here, you can crack open the input. Again, really hard to do with just one hand, but look for the red 3.5 in, and that is going to feed signal in. And what's cool is when you route that through this guy, you can, as long as you have the sound settings set to at least 1, so it's above 0 on the sound settings in here, then you can kind of control how intense this is. I found that I just keep it at like 10%. That seems to work really well. So like 10%, I just feed it out of like this one or this one. And then that just basically duplicates the sound to the cameras. So then when I go into post-production, you can just you can sync up all the audio in like 2 seconds in Premiere Pro. Okay. Or you can, the other thing is like, that's if you're doing like a recorded session, it's not live stream. Okay. Now, if you live stream, you can use the same Sony camera, but you have to convert it into, video. So I have Elgato's CamLink that converts this into video. But for now, I'm just doing it as a recording. So I just put everything on the memory card and then I sync it up in post-production. Anyway, so that's the audio setup. Okay. And then I'll set this up here in a second. So I guess that should be video number 1. It's just the hardware setup. But again, this is just, you know, I have USB-C, okay, USB-C connection here. That's feeding up into the USB-C input here. Thunderbolt 3. I was having some issues. Hypothetically, this actually doesn't require external power, but I was having the audio interface cut in and out a little bit. So I was assuming because of the headphones I'm using, because of this and because of these, it might have been stressing how much power I was pulling directly from the Thunderbolt cable. So I just plugged that in with the provided 12 volt DC power so that this has enough power and this has enough power, okay? And then everything's being saved on a little hard drive. Okay, so this is just a Samsung SSD. I think it's like 2 or 5 terabytes, but it's super tiny. I love this thing because it's got a ton of space, but it's like very, very small, compact. Okay, and then we would get into the software configuration. Okay, so that's basically the setup. Again, I'd have, I'll show in the close, but basically you'd have the same idea for this camera. Okay, and then you just set this up wherever you want to go. And one more thing from if we're talking about portable hardware, I picked up this kind of X stand, laptop stand, which I'm actually really stoked about because it folds down, so I could like collapse this, and it folds down to the size of an umbrella or even smaller than that. So really, really, really compact, and it's super sturdy. So I'm not sure if you want that product recommendation, I can dig it up for you, but I think that I might have bought it the wrong time because this got hit with the tariff fees coming from China. But again, I'm sure there's some good options out there. But I've been loving it. They had some kind of crazy deal where you get like 2 for the price of 1, or like 2 buy 2 get like 50% off or something. So anyway, okay, so that's the hardware setup, and then I'm just going to start another video for the software configuration. Okay, I'm going to shift to the computer. So basically now I'm just going to go in and I'll explain how OBS is working and then how it's routing into here. But essentially the hardware setup is I have microphone number 1 right here. I'm using mic number 1. I'm recording this video on just a tiny little DJI mic mini, so that's connected to my phone at the moment. But this guy goes in here, and then the second one is routed out here. And so again, these could be, you know, I'm still working on how it should be mounted best. I was just trying to test it to make sure the audio works, but this is just a little Elgato low profile mic stand that I can route the cables through. And anyway, so the point is I have one of these in my studio downstairs, and then I have another one for the road. So these can pack up. Again, they flat pack really small. And this is just a sandbag. You can't even see that. There we go. So this is just a sandbag, but I have this mounted to whatever I can find. In my case, it doesn't fit on the side of my table. So that's a quirk just because of how my my table is functioning, but usually you can just grip this guy on the side, and this works great for that. So anyway, so this is unnecessary, but you have 2 mics, and I'll show you how that is configured inside of the computer here in a second, okay? So this is mic number 1, which is plugging into input number 1, and then mic number 2, which is going right there. Okay, so I'll jump into the computer and I'll show you how it works. All right, so now I've switched over to the computer, and I'm not going to explain how to set up OBS, but I've basically just zoomed out the canvas here, so we're not getting that tunnel effect too bad. Okay, but you should be seeing my screen. Okay, and with the Scarlett 2i4, let me just minimize a bunch of stuff here. So basically, you install the driver. Okay, that's the very first step. They guide you through that. This is the new driver interface. And so I've just got the Focusrite Control 2. And then I can go up here to inputs. And I just, this is a software controller, so I can increase this or not depending on that. And it will basically work directly with the knobs in the front of the Scarlett 2i4. You have to have, if you're using a Shure SM7B, you have to have 48 volt power enabled, which again, you can control here from the software or directly on the front of the Focusrite. And then on the back end here, I just had to make sure that mute was not enabled and that these were just set to 0. Okay. And so you can see I've got audio flowing in both. There's the one right there. Here's number 2. Okay. So you can hear the audio flowing in 2 places, but I'll show you how this gets connected. Okay. So I'm just going to work off one. So in OBS, okay, pretty straightforward. I'm assuming if you found this video, you've already had it installed. Okay, I've got scenes on the left here, which I'll spare the details. So I have to add sources. And basically I have one source for mic inputs. I just go to add, audio input capture, and then you just give it a name. In my case, I just label it based off of the audio interface. So I was just like, I like to do the track. So if I'm gonna add a new track, I like to track 3. I would do 3, give it a name, and then I like to also specify what I'm putting in there. But again, if you're changing out mics a lot, maybe that's going to add confusion. So if I had a third input on like a bigger audio interface, maybe I would start to expand this a little bit more. Okay, so I'm gonna hit OK. You can literally ignore this part. In the past, the problem with OBS is that you'd have to go here to analog 1 and 2. And then that would essentially eliminate one port on your interface. So then you'd have to go in here, you'd have to hit OK, see it's coming in here now, and it's basically having like microphone number 2 is the right input. You can see that coming up there. Microphone number 1 is the left input, which is ridiculous. Okay. And so, and then you have to come over here to advanced, and you'd have to come down and select mono. And it would default to the first channel, which is just the left microphone. So, and that's also writing to all the tracks at the moment. Okay. So I would have to go in and unselect that and put it onto its own track, like track 3 or track 4. Okay. But what I like to do is just put a dedicated track for mic 1, dedicated track for mic 2. And then in this case, I put desktop audio on track 3. Easy enough. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and mute that one I just added. So then what you do is once you've specified the audio input, you have to add this plugin. So let me go there now. Okay. So go to reaper.fm and find replugs. Okay. And you need to download, in my case, I'm on a Windows 11 machine, and I just picked this plugin right here. Okay, if you pick that, just make sure you're not getting any ads or whatever. It should just be an executable file. Install that, and then one more thing too that I found is you have to put it in a consistent folder. I've already done this before in the past, but usually it's on the C drive under program files. And then see if my memory serves. Down here under VST plugins, and then there's replugs. Okay, so this is the default location. It may be somewhere else for you, but I haven't changed anything with Ableton Live. Okay, so what happens now if I go over to the other screen and we take a look at Ableton Live? Okay, so it's already opened up here. I'm in the vertical mode, so not horizontal mode. I'm in vertical mode. Again, I'm not like a audiophile. I'm just I'm just an architect who happens to know how to use these softwares. Okay, so just bear with me. So vertical files, track 1, track 2. Okay, you can always add more tracks by just right clicking and saying insert track. If I click on that, it's highlighting the whole track here. And then I've got the external in. Okay, so before I go down this, if you're not seeing this, go to options, go to settings, go to audio, and then make sure audio device is set to your audio interface. So in this case, I've specified the Focusrite USB ASIO. And so the ASIO, that's going to give you the multi-port control. And so you can ignore all these other ones that I tested and failed on. And then, yeah, this is, you can leave the rest of these as the defaults. Okay, I really didn't change anything here for buffer, sample rates, input, output, config. None of that changed. Okay, so just leave that alone. Make sure this is working. Okay, so the next thing is you go to the track, you go down here, and then you specify the input. In this case, I just gave a custom name to input number 1, and I did that in the options. So if you're not seeing it, you can go to here to input config, and then the left channel for mono input, I just gave it a name. So you can just type, literally just punch in letters, typing that. And again, I explicitly typed it as the microphones I'm using. Okay, bit overkill, but that's what I prefer to stay organized. Hit OK and close out. And so then what that does is now when you're down here and you go down here to external in, okay, that's the XLR cables we're putting in. Then you can see there's that microphone 1 input. And so this is the main difference between Ableton and OBS, because now I don't have to specify 1/2. I can specify a mono input and I'm good to go. Okay, so I'm just going to pick the mono in. To enable it, you have to hit auto. This is just monitoring. And then I also changed this to sends only, mainly just because I didn't want it to go over here and land on the main output in Ableton. This is not necessary, but I just did it to be absolutely sure I didn't have any problems. Okay, so I pick sends only, and then I come down here and I enable it. So clicking this button when it's red and filled means that it's turned on. Okay, and then if you want to, it will just switch 1 and 2. So to get both of them enabled, you hold Control, and then you click that, and it allows you to enable both tracks. Okay, then you repeat that for the track number 2. Okay, so just specifying the other input, and then finally, most of the time I found is that they put the Restream plugin on the main output, but what I found is that you can actually put the Restream on individual tracks. Okay, so again, if you're not seeing this, you go to plugins, and then you should be seeing it right here. But if you're not, you can have this watch for a certain folder, and I'm forgetting how to do that at the moment. But you can just look up how to basically map different folders. Oh yeah, you go to options, settings, you go here to plugins, and then you say look for this certain folder. So you can see here, you can browse, and I've just browsed for that. C program files, VST plugins. So as long as you're putting everything in that same folder, so if you have other plugins for Ableton for whatever reason, just put them in C drive, program, VST plugins, and then it should auto-populate. If it's not, just hit rescan and it will pop up. Okay, so that is the plugin there. And then once you're done, you can close that out, and it should be here in plugins. And then you want to come to Restream standalone. So just ignore everything else, grab this guy, and you just drag and drop it onto the track. Okay, and now I've got 2, which is overkill. But here's your default settings. And what you want to do is you're saying from Ableton, I'm going to send, and I'm going to send it to my local broadcast. So right here, I'm going to leave this at the default as 2 channels, and I'm going to give it a name. So in my case, I just called it Ableton Mic 1, like that. And I'm going to need this in a second, so I'm going to copy it. Okay. And then when you go back over to OBS, okay, Let's just use our example on the Focusrite 3. So in this example, you would go to sources. You go to your new mic input that you just created a second ago. You right click on it. You go down here to filters. And then you go down here to add. And again, if you've installed the Restream plugin, you should see this option for VST2.x plugin. I'm just going to hit OK. And then I'm going to go here and specify the same thing. So Restream standalone. Okay. And if you don't see something pop up right away, just click this button and it should pop up a very similar dialog box that you just saw a second ago in Ableton Live. And then all you're going to do is say receive, and I'm going to paste in that name. So now I'm looking to receive audio in from a very specific source. Okay, in this case, Ableton mic number 1. Okay, so you do that and you close it and close it. And now you should be seeing audio flowing in from that specific source from Ableton. Okay, so that's how I got the different tracks working on my end. And then of course you would just double check you're making sure you're routing out to the right track. So you have individual tracks in OBS and you're on your way. Okay, so I'm gonna delete that one because I've already set it up for the correct tracks. Okay. Then you'd repeat that process for as many mics as you have or as many inputs as you have. So again, now you have the flexibility. Let's go back to the screen number 2. Now you have the flexibility to build out as many mics as you want in Ableton as your digital audio workstation. So you can come in here, you can add more tracks, and then just repeat that process. And then continue to feed those in as individual inputs over on OBS. So in my case, for a podcast style format, this is what I want. I want individual tracks. Now, if you wanted the entire mix as if it was like a band or playing music, instead of putting it on individual tracks, you just do the same process, but you put it on main, and then main would be like the entire mix would go out to main and then over to OBS as a broadcast. Okay, so same exact workflow. You just put the plugin on main instead of the individual audio tracks. Okay, I already said that. Okay, so again, this took me way too long to figure out, so we're just gonna keep rolling with it. So now what's cool is in my test so far, like for example in Premiere Pro, I just did this a second ago. So let's go back to screen number 1. And this is a really tiny screen. I'm used to working on bigger files. But basically, if you organize your OBS, in my case, I've just done a simple 30 frames a second MOV file. And again, in OBS, I've changed the settings to output. And I can't change it now because I'm recording. But I've enabled outputting audio track number 1, 2, and 3. So in OBS's case, you can go up to 6 different tracks. I don't anticipate needing anything more than that for the podcast I'm envisioning. So that's more than enough. Okay. You'd have to get more complicated if you wanted to do more inputs, but for now, this is more than enough for what I'm doing. Okay. And then that'll write the file out. And here's an example of the file. So if I go and just hit the tilde key, you can see audio track number 1. This is a separate video I did before I started this one. So you can see there is individual track, individual audio, okay, on a per mic basis. So obviously there's a little bit of spill between each of these. I believe there's some AI tools out there in the market that can auto split this for you, so it just like it can focus on the audio depending on what it knows is the active speaker, so you don't get any of this background noise. And then you could do the same kind of thing with splitting up the video. So if you had individual video files, like you had dedicated cameras per speaker, then you could just you could just take your memory card, dump the video file, drag and drop it onto the timeline here, and then just go through, stretch this in Premiere, rename it, and you could just say like speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 3, and then, you know, connect, syncing that audio into here. So basically you're replacing this audio from OBS is OBS is the one that's carrying the primary audio. And then you use the audio from the other video files to just synchronize. Okay. So pretty straightforward to synchronize that once you get there. Again, because of the audio interface, and I was using a dedicated output channel with the HM4, okay, that kind of amplifies and splits the signals. I was able to basically send, it's essentially like the entire room. So if you had like 5 people talking on a podcast, you're sending everybody talking into the cameras, okay? And that's only for the purposes of syncing up the visual of the camera to the timeline in Premiere Pro, okay? And then in post, you basically mute those tracks from the raw camera file, and you only carry forward the OBS audio, okay? And then that's going to be your main thing. And then from there, you would go ahead and start, you know, you go into Premiere, you do your standard editing process, which I'll spare you some of the details. But basically, what I do is I just come here to audio track mixer, okay, which is its own thing, audio track mixer, okay, and I just twirl this open here. And then for most cases, I don't have to get into sending this over to Adobe Audition and doing a bunch of extra stuff here. I can get most of the stuff I need just by applying track effects to audio mixer. And then because it's on a dedicated track, you can see here audio 1, that would be my Shure, I would just say mic 1, okay? But you can see how it changes the name down here and changes it up here. And then this would be mic 2. Okay, so I'm not gonna do a full edit on this video. I just wanna show, like, once you apply those settings and you dial them in, you can get all your rack effects right in here, and then you're on your way, okay? So hopefully that is helpful. Again, this like was a 2-day painful experience to get this solved. So I'm hopeful that somebody out there will save 2 days of your life because you found this video. So hopefully that helps. I'm not planning on supporting comments. Okay, I just saw lots of comments out there, people getting confused just like me. So I figured instead of, you know, adding to the confusion, I want to add to the clarity. And yeah. And yeah, and then basically the one thing to remember is with scenes, once you get these set up, you do have to copy. So right click and copy, and then go back to your other scenes. And hello. You have to go back to your other scenes and then go to sources, and you would make sure that you paste as a reference. I've already done that, but in some cases you might have to go down to these other scenes that you might be setting up and reapply those settings, okay? So again, just double check that. And then from there, once you have that going, you could go into your, if you're using a Stream Deck software, and you'd work with the OBS plugin to configure connecting the Stream Deck to your OBS, okay? Essentially, what you do at this point is you would go in, you would again go to Stream Deck. Okay, so I've gone to the downloads. I was in the Stream Deck software, I installed it. I clicked this little guy up here to go to the marketplace. Make sure you're logged in so you can remember, okay? You're logged in, go to Stream Deck, and then go to plugins. And then I just added this OBS plugin, okay? And since this is a new instance, yeah, so basically it's pretty obvious. Essentially, you should be seeing, if you install Stream Deck and if you've plugged it in to a USB port, you should be seeing it show up here. It's under devices. So right now I just have the one device, but if you're not seeing it, just make sure it's active. And you should be seeing this layout is basically the exact same thing that's showing on your device, okay? So I'm not gonna go back to the mobile iPhone first-person view. So then all you gotta do is just click open in Stream Deck, and it should, I'm gonna select always allow. Again, I set it up on my other computer, but it's good that we're doing this live, so it's like fresh. It should redirect me. And it's not, so I'm gonna do that. Okay, there we go. And perfect. So this is OBS Studio plugin installed. Now you can see it in your action list. Okay, so now what you can do is you can either override everything in this profile. If you have it already set up on a different profile, you can just import it, okay? Or you can start from scratch. So what I typically do is I just add a new page, and then that gives me a blank slate, so I can always go back to the original layout here. And then I prefer to just put the back button on the top left here, and then you can start to organize. But the point is you just go here and you go to find OBS Studio on the right, okay? And you go and find things like, hey, start a recording. So if I go here, I just drop that in. That means it basically is connected now directly to the start and stop recording button, okay? When it's active versus unactive, so it's full green right now because it's active, okay? Same thing, I could go to scene and just pick scene and drop that in. And since OBS is active, it's actually waiting to find that. So I'm not gonna, basically you'd have the ability to specify the scene right here. And then if you want to overwrite the title, you can just give it a custom name, okay? Since I use the Stream Deck flat without it propped up, I prefer to just pick it on top here like this so I can see it from a distance. And I could just say like scene 1 or something. In this case, I use SC as screen, and all that good stuff. Okay, so again, this would log up. I'd have to actually launch a separate instance of OBS just to get this recording to work. I'm not going to do that right now, just because I don't care enough. But you get the idea. You work through the process, and then these buttons would start to highlight, and you can always add your own custom icons and whatnot. It is kind of cool though. There's a marketplace for this as well, so you can go to Stream Deck and icons, and I found there was a lot of really good ones in here that were free. Okay, so like I installed this Pure one, and it gave me a lot of extra kind of apps and stuff. The main reason I like this is because it gives you some visual distinction. So if you're looking at all those buttons and there's too many buttons, I don't want to get lost trying to figure out which button to click. So I use these, like for example, I just use the Pure as a way to give myself some visual separation between that. So I like to use the empty ones when it's inactive, and then I pick a certain colored one when it's active. Okay, pretty simple, but pick the ones you want. I wouldn't spend too much time going crazy with this because, just focus on building great content, but do whatever works for you. It's totally customizable, which is nice, and you're on your way. Okay, so that's Stream Deck. That's really all you need to know. All this other stuff is just, scene collections, profiles. Basically those two is if you have different size canvases. Like I have a dedicated one for live streaming, and then another one for like recording tutorials and things like that. So I would create a dedicated scene collection and a dedicated profile for shooting podcasts, okay? And then you don't have to necessarily control those in Stream Deck. You could, but I would just go back to OBS and make that profile, okay? So that is all I want to cover in this one. Hopefully that's useful for you. Again, I'm just trying to pay it forward a little bit because this was painful to find all the answers. Have a great day, and go create something amazing.